Hey everyone, so before I get started talking about my listening strategies and the barriers I had and the strategies that I used to break down those barriers, I just want to talk about the context of the video. So it was a debate, and the debate was between a debater from Western Kentucky who was on the affirmative, as well as a debater from Truman who was on the negative. And it was established at the beginning of the video that they would be debating the resolution of the U.S. federal government increasing its development of the Earth's contribution in the cultivation of the moon's resources, including minerals, energy, and water. So the Kentucky debater, as I said, was on the affirmative, so she started off by presenting her case and talking about, in general, going to the moon and establishing land rights on the moon. So she talks about how international law right now prevents that from happening, with all the ramifications that could come and ensue if there were an entity or a country to go do that. So with these problems and with these threats, such as World War III, as she mentions, she has a proposition, and she proposes that the U.S. be the people who go to the moon and claim the land and use the resources, because right now the U.S. is at the top of international power, and that all of the countries would have no choice but to invest in it. Now, the Truman speaker comes in, and one of the points that he makes as a retort to her is he questions that coercion. He says, so essentially what you're saying is that if the U.S. goes to the moon and takes that land, then all of the countries will have no choice but to invest in it. So that's the claim he makes in response to her. Now, she spoke pretty fast, and I consider myself a very analytical listener. And one thing that I really enjoyed about her speech was that even though she spoke really fast, she made distinct pauses and verbal transitions between her points. So she presented the harms, the affirmative plan, the advantages, etc. And I thought that was great. My processing rate was very hard. It was hard to summarize what she was saying when she was saying it, and this makes me think of like the barriers of place. So maybe I would have heard it better had I been there, but at the same time, I was able to summarize her information because I could listen to 10 to 20 seconds of her speech, and then I could pause it and summarize that and write it down and think about what she was saying and then continue it. And the other thing was information overload. This is not a topic I'm very familiar with, so it was something that was hard to process in the first place, and that was a little bit of a barrier for me. There were two things that kind of helped me, and I already kind of talked about one, about how the barrier of place, even though it was a barrier, and I probably could have heard her better had I been at that place, it was also an advantage, like I said, because I was able to pause the speech and summarize the information and then continue the speech whenever I was ready. And I also talked about how she would pause and use conspicuous verbal cues whenever she was making a transition. That really helped me as well.